Hey guys, Nicole here with Obscure Reptiles and Caging, and today we have 8 different things to help you if your new ball python isn't eating. So let's get started. Hey guys, so today we have 8 different things for you guys to consider or try or check if you have a new ball python that is not eating for you. Number 1, the biggest thing I see, especially when people are having issues with babies that are not feeding, is their cage and setup. If you are starting out with a baby ball python, you have to make sure that that baby is in an appropriate size cage. We have a full ball python hatchling care guide if you guys are interested in seeing one. We do recommend that you keep a very small baby in a very small enclosure. We highly recommend starting out with Sterlite bins, the 6-quart. We got another video dedicated just to showing you guys the full breakdown of a baby setup. But keeping ball pythons, especially babies, in glass, there are a lot of negatives. We have a ton of videos explaining all that kind of stuff, but you want to make sure your baby is as comfortable as possible. A lot of people are cautious about putting a tiny little baby into a tiny 6-quart Sterlite bin, but you have to keep in mind, in the wild, all they do is find a spot to hide, and then they wait for food basically to come to them. They really don't do much, especially as babies, so by putting them in too large of a cage, or a cage that doesn't have appropriate amount of hides, or it's in an area that's really loud, then that baby can very easily become too stressed and overwhelmed and not want to eat for you. Make sure, again, there are ample hides. You can even do things where you can get actually water bowls that have little lips under them like we use. That way they can have a hide on the cold side, and then you want to provide them a hide on the warm side minimum. Number 2, the second biggest thing I always hear from people is they're holding their baby every day, every couple of days, and they haven't even gotten their baby to eat. Personally, when people get babies from me, I always tell them, when you get your baby, get it home, let it settle in for a week, and then try feeding it. If it eats for you, if it's consistently eating for you, then go ahead and hold that baby. If for some reason then it stops eating, normally it's because you're overhandling it, and I tell them to back it up a little bit. But if a baby's eating, or any ball python's eating for you, it's not getting stressed from being handled. Some babies get very stressed very easily, others are a little bit more laid back. It all depends on the age of the baby and that specific baby itself. So if you have a baby and you just got it, you haven't even gotten it eating yet, do not hold that baby, or if you already are, give it a little bit of time, make sure it's eating for you, because that's one of the biggest ways of knowing if you're truly stressing out that animal or not. Number 3, I highly recommend checking on the temperature and humidity for that baby. A really good thing to throw into an enclosure, you get one of these. They can tell the temperature and humidity, but that doesn't give you their hot spot. That just gives you the general heat and humidity where this is located. I always tell people to get one of these. They're $20 on Amazon. This is a temperature gun. Anything you shoot it at, you can get the exact temperature of what it's being shot at. So this is a perfect way of what the hot and cold side of the enclosures is exactly. Number 4 is, where is that ball python located? Do you have it in your living room where you play movies very loudly, or you have a lot of people running around, you have kids that are being a little bit loud, you have all that kind of stuff? So keep into consideration where you have that animal. It might be best, for example, in a bedroom or a quieter area of your house, especially if you have like a spare room or something that's not constantly traveled by people. You don't want to stress them out. Again, as they age, most ball pythons do totally fine in a more loud area, but if you have a very young, very nervous snake, then you want to consider keeping it in a quiet location. Number 5 is, what are you feeding that animal, and what was it eating before you purchased it? This is why I always tell people, don't go to a pet store, go to someone who's actually a breeder, so you can have a conversation with them of what they're eating, what size, mice versus rat, live versus frozen. Some are on ASF. But if you go to a breeder, especially a reputable breeder, they will know all of that stuff. A lot of us write down the exact meals, what size, what dates, or at least have a minimum of what they were eating, and be able to give you a little bit more of advice, especially if you're having an issue with that animal. Number 6 is, how often are you trying to feed this animal? If you're trying to feed it every 2 or 3 days because it didn't eat that first day, again, you're probably stressing out that animal. If it does not eat, I would highly recommend waiting 5 to 7 days and then trying it again. But remember, don't hold it during that time. Make sure it has water. You can check on it and just not bother it too much, but do your best to completely leave that animal alone so it can get used to its surroundings at its pace. Number 7 is, how long has this snake not been on food? Has it only missed one meal, or has it not been eating since you actually got the baby? You have to, again, make sure you're going to a reputable person who's actually making sure these babies are eating when you're purchasing them. For example, we have a minimum of 5 meals for every baby ball python who leaves. But some of them are picky and like to skip meals, and in that case we make them eat even more until they get consistent, or at least until they are growing some size on them. When a baby ball python actually hatches, it comes out, it has to actually go right into shed, so it has to stay on very wet paper towels until it has its first shed, and then some babies right away are ready to eat. Others can take weeks or even months to figure out what feeding is. Some can be very picky, some will only want live, some will only want mice, and it's up to that breeder to figure out what works best for that baby, make sure the conditions are perfect, and then once they again are eating consistently, they are sold. But if you're going to someone who's not very reputable, that baby hasn't even had its first shed yet and they're considering selling it, I would highly recommend going somewhere else. As a big red flag. Also keep in mind, for example, if you have an adult male ball python, or you got one that's like 3 years old and it's winter time and you just got him and he is not eating at all for you, that could be what's known as Burmation. We've got an entire video talking about Burmation, breaking it down completely, male versus females, everything you need to know. But keep in mind, if you have an older snake, going off feed can be totally normal depending on the year, the gender, and what it's done in the past. So the age can greatly affect the baby. For example, if it is under a year old, male or female, it never really should go off food. But keep in mind, some babies are more picky than others, and some specifically only want a certain type. Some only prefer, let's say, mice, some only prefer live. All of them are different. And number 8, where did you get this snake from? Again, if you went to, let's say, a pet store, you purchase a snake and it's not eating, and the pet store doesn't have any information, you call them in a couple of weeks, and you're kind of out of luck, unfortunately. If you go to, let's say, a reptile expo and you go to a vendor without checking out their social media, learning anything about them, you just pick out a snake, you don't get their card, you don't have their information to go back and be able to question that person later on, then again, unfortunately, you're out of luck. You just have to do research and try your best. But if you go to someone specific and you end up having questions, good reputable breeders will answer your questions along the way, even if it's a few weeks or few months down the line. Just as a little side note, make sure, 1, your snake isn't sick if it's not eating, if it has something like, let's say, a respiratory infection, if it's wheezing, drooling, you hear it making some strange clicking noises, a lot of extra saliva, especially yawning a lot with a lot of saliva in there, or you're not even sure if the baby's sick, it's just not eating, and you've done everything on this list, please go to a veterinarian and make sure that you get help from a professional. Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope it helped. If you guys have any questions, please put them in the comments below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. We do a few videos every single week. So I'll see you guys in the next video.